All right. We're going to go ahead and get started. For those of you who are just joining us, make sure you throw your name and if you're a student or alum, the year that you graduated or anticipate graduating in the chat. If you're not a student or alum, faculty, staff, feel free to just throw your name in there too, just so we can take some attendance. That would be great. I appreciate everyone being here tonight. We're really excited to chat with all of our panelists, answer your questions, hopefully, and give you the opportunity to connect with alums in your field. My name is Taylor Lynch, and I work in the Alumni Engagement Office. Meredith Chase and I, Meredith Wave, yes, thank you, coordinate this Alumni Speaker Series throughout the year. And my intern, Mia, in the Alumni Engagement Office, Mia Wade, is going to be moderating our panel tonight. So I'll let you kick it off, Mia.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Mia Teal, and I would first like to start off by welcoming you all to this virtual Alumni Speaker Series, Careers in English and Professional Writing. I'm currently an intern with Alumni Engagement, and again, would like to thank you all for coming out this evening. Before we begin, I want to introduce our 6 dedicated, hardworking alum who have agreed to be here today to share their experiences in their respective fields, provide some advice for those of you with similar career goals, and some tips that you may not receive in the classroom. Our first panelist is Allison Best VanLiew, class of 2013, who is currently a campus recruiting liaison and diversity strategy partner at M&T Bank. Our second panelist is Philip Bolton Jr., class of 2009, who is currently a lead technical writer at FICO. Our third panelist is Robyn Macy, class of 2013, who is currently a senior social media manager at Weight Watchers. Our fourth panelist is Cheryl Ringer Segura, class of 2012, who is currently a senior editor for McGraw-Hill. Our fifth panelist is Sarah DeLena, class of 2018, who is currently a social media consultant for Multi-Service Eating Disorders Association. Sarah is also a Publishing and Writing Masters of Art candidate at Emerson College. And finally, our sixth panelist is Sarah Gentillon, class of 2010, who is currently a manager of copy at Ralph Lauren. Before we open up the floor for questions, I would like to ask each of our panelists to provide us with a brief description about what they do. We'll start off with Allison.
Hi, everybody. So nice to see you all. So I am currently a campus liaison for M&T Bank in the recruiting department. So I help people just like you improve their resumes, prepare for interviews, and get internships and full-time jobs. I'm currently moving into a program manager role for D&I strategy within talent acquisition, which basically means we take people who don't work in my department, train them how to have compliant conversations and do the work, and then send them out to the communities that mean the most to them to help make an inclusive work environment for the bank. And just want to say you can be a writing major and work for the bank. Thank you.
Thank you, Allison. We'll have Philip go next.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me? Okay. My name is Philip Bolton Jr. I go by PBJ at work and amongst friends, so you're all allowed to call me that. I graduated 2009 from the professional writing program. I work at FICO as a technical writer, and some of you might know FICO as like the credit score company, but I actually work in a different area of FICO. My team specifically delivers software that does optimization. I won't get into that detail, but basically my day-to-day is writing user documentation, design documentation, and supporting developers, so math nerds and coders. And yeah, I think that sums it up.
Thank you so much, Philip. We'll go to Robyn next.
Hi, I'm Robyn. I've been in social media for about 8 years now. Excited to be here. Currently, I'm the senior social media manager at WW, or formerly Weight Watchers. I handle all of the organic social media. So I'm writing all the posts, I'm scheduling them, analyzing them, and kind of being the liaison for the rest of the department. So I'm excited to be here.
Thank you, Robyn. Next, we'll go to Cheryl.
Hi, everyone. I'm Cheryl Segura, and I graduated in 2012. My job is a senior editor at Mcgraw-Hill Education, and what I do is I acquire, edit, and publish books in the business space. So if you think of books like How Do You Be a Better Leader? How do you communicate more effectively? If you wanted to start a side hustle or a new business, the books that I publish are all in that space. So I'm excited to talk to everyone today and answer any questions you guys might have about publishing, editing, or the like.
Awesome. Thank you, Cheryl. We'll go to Sarah DeLena next.
Hi, I graduated in 2018. I'm a social media consultant for a nonprofit organization called Multi-Service Eating Disorders Association. And like Robyn, I handle all the organic social media. I copyright all the posts. I design graphics for social media campaigns, do a lot of email marketing and that sort of thing. And I'm also a publishing events assistant for Emerson College. So I communicate with authors, literary agents, and directly with publishers to create events for the campus in the publishing department.
Great, thank you. And last but not least, we'll go to Sarah Gentillon.
Hi, everyone. So as a manager of copy at Ralph Lauren, what I do is basically I write the copy for all social media posts for Polo Ralph Lauren. I also contribute to other Ralph Lauren brands as well, including Ralph Lauren, Ralph Lauren. I also write paid media copy for brands like Macy's, Bloomingdale's, and also for publishing houses such as Condé Nast and Hearst. Aside from that, I also write and concept campaigns, so seasonal fashion campaigns, or just kind of like what's going on in the world. As currently right now, we're working on a International Women's Day campaign for social media. My main role focuses mainly on social media, but I'm kind of pulled in all areas that needs copy at Ralph Lauren, really.
Great, thank you so much. So now we can open up the floor to questions. You can just type them right in the chat if you'd like. I have a few questions to get us started while you are typing. So while you guys are doing that, I'll ask the first question. So on a typical day in your position, could you explain what you do? And whoever wants to start can go first.
I can jump in if nobody else is going to. So as a senior editor, my day can be a lot of different things. I'll walk you through kind of today though. I had a meeting internally with my marketing team. So that was just them kind of asking what's going on with your books, how are we able to get the word out there about each of those. I also had a potential author call, which is basically me talking to someone who has a book idea, but I have to ask them some questions before bringing them forward to the next part of the process, which is pitching it to the people internally to say, yes, we want to publish that book. I also spoke to one of my current authors who we just signed his contract. So we are officially working together, which has been months in the making. So that was really exciting for us to kind of talk about what's the process now that we've begun this partnership and actually have to do the editorial work that we'll do together. And my favorite part of the job, as my title would suggest, is I also did some editing of one of my books. So what I do is acquisitions and developmental editing, and developmental editing is really diving deep into the content of the book. It's not really looking at commas and all of that. It's looking at, is this going to kind of do two things, which is deliver on the reader promise, which is what we say the book will do, and deliver on the reader experience, and make sure that we're putting that content in a way that readers will be able to respond to and use effectively. So that's a little bit about me.
Anyone else can jump right in if you have anything to say.
I can go. I have a little bit of a crazy schedule. So when I'm acting in recruiting function, I'm setting up campaigns and talking to students in Handshake. So if you haven't set up your Handshake profile, please do it. We use it. Those are real conversations that people are having with you. Event coordination. But moving into my other role, trying to establish and build out a diversity recruiting strategy for the entire bank means that I am on a ton of calls, doing presentations. I led focus groups. I talked to Robyn about how to do a focus group. So tapping into my network to figure out how we're doing this, and generally just having conversations about where people want to be and how we get them there. I get to use a lot of the rhetorical skills that I developed in PWR, trying to understand motives, reasoning, and what's the best way to influence to get people on my side and moving forward. So while I see some of this information in the chat, it's not directly related to writing. I use a lot of the similar skills that I learned. And I would love to hear more about PBJ's job.
Smooth. So it's a good question, day to day. So I guess I can just talk about today. Today I had a meeting internally with my team about putting together a design document for a project. And so, as I had mentioned, I help with design documentation and end user documentation. So I'm at the beginning of a project lifecycle where we're taking requirements and we're designing what the software will look like. We're looking at wireframes, we're looking at mock-ups of the software, and then we're putting all of the information about that into a design document. So I had meetings today about that, about what the design of the software should look like, and sort of behind the scenes, what I'm starting to think about is, what will the user guide look like? How can I architect it so that if we have another project like that, so it can be reusable? So that's kind of what I do in a nutshell, and kind of in the context of today. I'm not as smooth as Allison, so.
I can go. So I work part-time as a social media consultant. So sometimes the day starts with meeting with the executive director of MEDA, and we plan out together what we want to go out on the all the social media platforms, and then I schedule them so I don't do it manually. We schedule our daily posts. We do inspirational posts for people who are impacted by eating disorders. We look for and plan ahead for certain campaigns. So this week is National Eating Disorder Awareness Week. So we have graphics going up for that I've designed ahead of time. We also have a conference coming up, and we're going to start announcing panelists. So we're going to have designs going up for that, and things I need to create. And we're also tweaking content strategy per platform, depending on how they're changing, how audiences are reacting to posts, what posts are doing better and getting the most engagements, and then, tweaking per platform because different media does well on different platforms.
Any other panelists like to go, or we can go to the next one?
Sure, I can answer that. So my day, for example, it really varies from what's being pushed forward. But for the most part, I work really, really closely with the social strategy teams. They know, for example, what campaigns are going to be on social media. And so we kind of rally up together and decide which images we're going to use and what capacity. And once that creative is decided on, then what I do is I just dive into information about, for example, the clothes that the models are wearing, and really format a story surrounding that campaign for social media. Another thing that I did today is I had a bunch of meetings about International Women's Day, really focusing on what's the story that we want to share with our audience, how do we want to show our allyship when it comes to International Women's Day, and really introducing our audience to what we as a company are doing. So my job is to really focus on how we want to speak to that narrative. Hope that answers the question. Sure.
All right, that was great. Thank you. We'll go to the first question from our attendees. It says, is the position you are all in the position you wanted to be in once you graduated, or is it something you just happened to come into?
I'm happy. So I really wanted to desperately be in magazines. I know now everyone says magazines are dying, which they might be, but at the time in 2012 when it was thriving, it was an exciting place to be. I was interning at 17 in Redbook. And when I graduated, I was doing a lot of edit tests, and it was a lot of long form writing with like 500 words that you have to like answer all these things. And I found myself like really judging through them. But like the social media edit tests were so fun to me. They were just quick little blurbs where you had to kind of describe. It was almost just writing headlines to articles. And that's all social media felt like to me, is like the most fun part of writing articles were the headlines. So what if I can make a career out of that? So writing copy has been so much fun. And most of my job, I hate to glamorize this, but like it's creating memes like all day. And like we're thinking ahead to like how our brand could fit into different like holidays and stuff like the Sarahs we're talking about. But I think I am so happy I was able to pivot in the way I did. And I kind of fell into it. But I'm so happy I did, because it felt like the better fit for me. I think being a PWR major, a lot of times, and this is no fault to Dr. Frank, who's amazing, the editorial jobs seem like the only place you could go with this. But like you see Allison, you see me, you see the Sarahs, it's like there's so many different places you can go with the major. And so I'm really happy I was able to pivot, and I hope that answers the question.
I think that's really great information, and I'm not sure if this resonates with anybody, but I had a panic my senior year quietly. I don't think I ever told anybody, but I was just like exactly what Robyn said. I want to get in magazines, and I don't know that this is actually going to work. But what I knew deep down was that I wasn't ready for a desk job. So I took 3 years and taught English abroad, and then came back to Buffalo, and then panicked because there was no epiphany as to this is what you'll spend your life doing. And I actually found a contracting job because I was wedding planning, and I just needed a job. And when I came into the bank, I was like, obviously a writing major or math is not my thing. This is going to be short term. And what I found is that people were able to tune into my strengths, and I raised my hand and I asked questions, and I identified projects that I thought were interesting. And it's really been it's been such an experience to be able to tell people how they should use me, and then they give me those projects. And that's been a real light bulb for me, that it doesn't matter what you want to do now, because you may have a change of heart, but knowing what your transferable skills are first and the work that you like to do second can really help direct you and guide you in any job that you get into, even if it doesn't look like it's going to work right off the bat.
I totally agree with you, Allison. When I graduated in 2010, it was we entered into a recession, and so there were no jobs. So I personally thought that I was gonna go to a publishing house like Random House and be an intern and work my way up and read books and like do all these amazing things. And then that wasn't happening, and so I had to pivot. And I ended up going into magazines by chance, actually. I landed an internship at Vogue. and that was really interesting because I never thought about going into magazines. And during my time there, I realized there were different ways to tell stories. Telling a story doesn't necessarily have to be like in black and white on pages. You can literally tell a story visually with clothes. Clothes present something and anything like they seek to you, and your audience can take from whatever you're showing them. Can take something from what you're showing them. And so I really fell with that and ended up doing that for a couple of years of stylist up until 2019, doing shoots for any magazine that you can think of, from Vogue to GQ to Teen Vogue, whatever. Like, I did it all. But then the magazine industry is dying. I know someone said that they've heard that it might be dying. No, like, it's dying, it's dead, it's a dead horse. And that's just because the way that the world has changed. We have Instagram now, we have like all these different platforms, and no one's really interested in picking up a physical magazine anymore. People are just interested in different things now. And so again, I had to pivot and get into something else. And for me, that just meant going back to my original plan, going back to like my first love, writing, and really giving that a try. I never thought about copywriting. That wasn't something that I wanted to do. And I think that was because I was miseducated on what copywriting was. I thought it was super boring product copy, and nobody wants to sit there all day and write about, shirts and shoes all day. I didn't know that there was this creative part of copywriting, that you're actually providing way more than just the words. So once I gave that a shot, I actually really fell in love with it. So there's really no way to tell what you're gonna do. I think you just have to be open-minded and kind of try different things until you figure out what you want, because at 21, 22, when you're graduating from college, you're not gonna have the answers. You think that you do, but you do not, because life just kind of just throws different kind of obstacles at you. So as long as you're open-minded and optimistic, you might end up doing something completely different. But I think, like Allison said, as long as you understand what your skills are, it'll all kind of like, it will all work out for sure.
And I'll just piggyback off of that and say that copy editing and copywriting is so important. And without the copywriters that I work with, our books would not sound as good when they're up on Amazon or up on Barnes and Noble, for sure. So your jobs are so important.
And without copy editors, we wouldn't know what to do.
Exactly. So to answer the question, when I started, actually, I'm going to pause. Can you guys hear, is there a really annoying sound in the background of me? Okay, thought so. That's the steam heat in Queens. So sorry. I'm going to just mute myself and plug in headphones first.
I'll prep Cheryl. She had a book for her internships when she was going, literally just the most early baby editorial. And I was just like, how do I get one of those? And she was just like, it's a lot of work. And she's just flipping through pages. She was definitely made for this.
Yeah, we can't hear you, Cheryl. It was making a worse sound. These headphones are giving us problems tonight. I think it's your headphones.
Is that better?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm very sorry, everyone. I said before, I wish the steam would do its job while I needed it to, but of course it didn't. So back to answering the question. When I started at Cortland, I was a pre-major. I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. All I knew is that I loved books. So I decided once I got there to be an English major, and then I found out about the professional writing program, and I started that as my pre-major. Again, not knowing what I was going to do with it other than hoping I would be a teacher. I did not get into that department. I was devastated, but I had to move on, so I did. And I took a revising and editing class, and I just immediately fell in love. I said, this is what I want to do. It was probably too ambitious at the time, but I was determined that was it. I loved it so much. So from there, I did an internship at the office, the publications office on campus. And then from there, I applied to a bunch of different internships in the city. There are a lot of unpaid internships, which is unfortunate because I think that you should be valued for your time and paid for that. Hopefully the industry changes that up a little bit, but I found a job where it was paid because my mom said, I'm not paying for your train pass. You have to do that yourself. And I respect that. So I found a job where I got paid, and that happened to be as an editorial intern at Mcgraw-Hill Education. And I've been there since. I think it's almost 9 years now. So, but I did not know what I wanted to do when I first started at Cortland. It wasn't until junior year that I took that class. So if you're feeling scared and lost, I was there. You'll be okay. I promise.
Those were great answers. Thank you. Anyone else before we move on? Okay. So our next question says, it's a two-part question. What was your first job in the English field, and what job did you search for at first that allowed you to get into this position today?
I'm happy to go. I think I already answered it a little bit, but well, my first job out of school, I was fortunate enough to live with my parents on Long Island and commute into the city, and I just needed to be self-sufficient. So I took any job that allowed me to just work. So I was front desk at a marketing firm, and I was able to freelance edit, freelance do articles for Hello Giggles, which is so good. And I can't emphasize that enough. I know we've hit on internships a lot, but you need to get an internship. Like, it is so important. It is everything. And it's the only thing that's going to make you different from every other person with a resume. As someone who's looking at resumes, it's the only thing to make you stand out. And so having that, having those internships and having the freelance on my LinkedIn helped me get noticed. So when I was kind of branching off from that, I was open to almost anything because I just didn't want to be front desk anymore. And I kind of stumbled into social media, but it was because I had the background in writing and professional writing, and I did like some freelance articles, and I had my internships in magazines. It had the employer have trusted me that I could do it. And so I don't know if anyone's like around the city. It's 16 Handles was my first social media gig, and I was doing it for them. I got to eat froyo every day, and so I do recommend that. Okay, I'm done.
I very much agree with Robyn. Internships are so important, and I know in the PWR major, we were required to do one. That was my first editing position. It was an unpaid editing internship for an online magazine, but it was it was my first experience, and I plopped it right on my resume. I also would like to stress, I know it's got to be so hard remote, but I was in a lot of clubs on campus. I was the chief editor of Speak Magazine, and I was also a chair in the Student Activities Board. I was a comedy lecture chair, and I monitored, a budget of like $20,000, and that got me my first job as a bank teller because they were like, do you have any cash handling experience? And I was like, once I sold spring fling tickets and I touched a lot of money, and they were like, it's good enough for us. Got that job. I graduated in December of 2018, so it was it was an odd amount of time before I went to graduate school the next fall, so I needed like a job in between. So I was a bank teller, and then on the side, I did another unpaid internship at night online as a writer for an online magazine. And then to get to this position, at first when I got to Boston, where Emerson is, I was applying to any editorial internship, but they were so competitive. So like Sarah was saying before, like I had to pivot. So I looked for more opportunities. I opened it up to communications internships, and I saw an unpaid internship but it was at the Boston Public Library. And I said, you know what? That's going to look so good. And I can just do it on the side while I do my other job. And I got that position. And at the end, they offered me contract work. So you can actually, get some kind of job offer at the end. You're definitely networking with the people there, and you have guaranteed reference letters, because if they're not paying you, you better force them to write you references by the end of that, so you can get experience from it and a reference you can count on. And from doing communications work for the library, I was handling all their social media. I was writing memes, which someone said before, which was super fun. I finally got this position as a social media consultant, and I'm doing that part-time with event planning for the college. And the way that I got the event planning position was they saw that I had SAB on my resume. They said, "You planned events for colleges before?" And I said, "Yes." And they said, "Do that for us." And I said, "Yay." That's my story.
I'm just going to chime in and say the club thing that you mentioned is so important. My boss, who has now been my boss for 9 years, said one of the main things she said about my resume was the fact that I could manage a lot of things because of all the clubs I was in. I was the president of Kickline. I was the secretary of, I can't even remember. I wrote for Dragon Chronicle. I did 2 others that, of course, can't think of off the top of my head now, but there were 5 things going on at once on top of taking 18 credits and doing an internship. It was a lot, but it proves and it helps and equips you with the skills you need to do your job really well in the industry.
Thank you so much for those responses. Anyone else from the panel, or should we go to the next question? All right, so we'll go to the next question. It says, is it possible to be an editor as well as an author?
I'll take that one. The answer is yes. I would not be, but you can.
So I'm going to school for publishing and writing at Emerson for my master's degree. And I basically want to be Cheryl. I told her this before it started. I want to be her. I want to be an acquisitions editor, but for trade fiction. So I want to be an editor, but I also love to write. I love it so much. And I write on the side. Everyone who wants to be a writer on the side, or that to slowly become their full-time thing, make a submittable account and be constantly submitting, have at least like 30 submissions out at all times, because they can take a year to even reply no. And that's how I slowly started to get things published. I have a poem that's coming out. I have a short story that got published. I haven't been paid for any of these, but you get a free copy in the mail of the magazine, and you can say you're a published author. And then once maybe you want to write a book one day, you can use that as like leverage when you're getting a literary agent and be like, look, it's been proven that I'm worthy of being published, and use that to your advantage and plop it right on your resume.
Another thing that I want to add, kind of based off of what you just said, Sarah, when I was applying for internships, there were specific credentials. One being you had to have a 3-point something GPA. I did not have that. I was not going to apply to the internship at Mcgraw-Hill, and my husband, boyfriend at the time, while I was at Cortland, said, just apply. What's the worst that can happen? 9 years later, he was absolutely right. So just apply. Why not? Just do it.
Thank you so much. Anyone else from the panel like to speak on that?
Yeah, I can. So editor versus writer. My first 2 professional jobs were as editor. First one was electronic theses and dissertations editor. And this answer kind of combines answers to several of the questions we've had, but basically I was trying to become an academic librarian. So I went to grad school after Cortland and got a master's degree in library science. And in my first job, I did something that was sort of a hybrid. They wanted to interview me immediately because I had like the exact perfect fit of like grad school and undergrad things that were like culminating into this one thing. So I took it, and I always wanted to be a writer. But what I found is that even as an editor, I was writing tons of things. There's always something to communicate. So for instance, I had to write a guide to help students figure out the process of what they're doing when their theses and dissertations are coming up. So I had to write a whole guide about like, what do you do for copyright and what do you do for telling your professors that you're ready and what forms do you need, and so process documentation basically. In my next position after that, I was a technical editor where I did verbatim compliance, meaning the engineers were the writers, and then we just took what they gave us and put it into the document. So again, I always wanted to be a writer, so that was not very fun for me. But then there were other things around that process, like how do the engineers know what style to use, and how do they interface with us? That type of stuff had to be documented. And now I'm at the point where I'm a technical writer. I'm a real boy now. I'm writing, but even then, I still get asked from other folks, can you review this and edit this document? It has nothing to do with your job, but you're the only person doing what you do on the team. So it's like, okay. So I think you're always doing both, really, to be honest.
I just wanted to add also, to answer the question, yes, you can be an editor and you can be a writer, but I also wanted to point out that being an editor doesn't mean that you can, there isn't just one way of being an editor. While some panelists have mentioned being an editor in the writing form, from my experience, I can say that like you can be an editor visually as well. So I think that's also important to kind of keep in mind as well. Even if you're writing, for example, I would say like as writers, we're very creative. Visuals are really important to us, even if it's something that we just see in our own minds that we're writing down. So in my experience, editing means really figuring out how things look together, like how to format things together visually. So for example, if it's a photo shoot and I have 20 images in front of me, I need to figure out how to basically outline those images in a way that it's consistent, it's coherent, and then it just makes sense. But I also wanted to add that while I was doing that, because writing was so important to me, as so many people have mentioned before, like I was writing on the side as well, even if it was for my own personal collection of whatever, whether it was poems or whatever. I think it's always important to write. So even if you're working a random job out of college, like customer service, that has nothing to do with like writing per se, it's so important to just like have a journal and just continue to write, because just to have those motors moving, it's always important, because even when you go to an interview, you may not have anything published, but you can say, hey, like I've been writing this for X amount of time and I can show you the work. That way you can see my writing style.
Those were great answers. Thank you. I actually didn't know you could be an editor and an author at the same time. So I learned something. So our next question is actually from one of the best professors I've had at Cortland, Professor Carla Owls. And it says, how important is the idea of leadership in your field?
I'll take this one. It's huge. Being able to demonstrate different competencies of leadership, which can vary depending on industry, is really, really important to be able to set yourself apart. what I have found, especially coming into banking, HR, so still, you know, necessarily completely foreign, people related, but still banking, I knew nothing. But knowing your ability to be curious and to show improvement, to take feedback gracefully, to say, thank you for helping me be better, and not getting defensive, and to take it as a learning moment, are the things that will kick you up so much faster and farther. Right now, in terms of leadership, it's owning your development, owning your progress, owning your story, and your responsibility to engage others around you to get you where. One thing you'll hear when you get into well, at least corporate, I'm sure it's the same everywhere, is that you own your own development, right? It is on you to make sure that you show up and ask for the projects that you want and the assignments that you want, but also understand that sometimes these setbacks are for a reason, and it's that ability to stand up and define for yourself how you'd like to engage, bring people with you, and really shape your future. And I'll share one story. When I first moved back from Korea, I took a writing job because it was a writing job, and it was a nonprofit, and it was based in Buffalo, and it had a great starting salary, and I was like, this is great. And I got in, and I absolutely hated it. I hated it. I didn't like him. I didn't like the work environment. I didn't like it was making copy. Bless you all who do that. It is not for me. And I had to really separate my identity from a writer, right? This thing that I went to school for, this thing that I said I wanted to be, and take his feedback, which was, you know, you need a lot of help learning things. You have a lot of questions. It's like, yes, I do. I do have a lot of questions. And now I go into banking for a regional bank for all across the Northeast, and I ask these questions, and I'm received well, and I'm encouraged to ask more questions. And then, like I said, being able to express where I know my strong suit is, which is bringing people together, talking about diversity, getting all of these projects under my wing has really helped to set up these teams that I'm trying to build. So that's a really long-winded way to say your ownership and your development is that early form of leadership that can really set you off on that path that you want.
That's a great answer, Allison. I'll jump in. I interpret leadership as initiative, and initiative is everything. This is a humble brag right here, but I got promoted in like a year at this job at Weight Watchers because I was able to anticipate, yes, not a big deal. I was able to anticipate my boss's needs. I've been in social media long enough. She actually wasn't. She was the I think fitness editor at Cosmo for like 5 years or something. And this was her first social media job, and she was a social media director. And so like, here's me coming in being like, let me take that analytic deck that is just like an email with text only. Let me put a beautiful, like, I'll make into a deck for you. Like, can I do this for you? Is that all right? And it takes a beat, and it takes like getting to know everything and asking 4 million questions. But as soon as you realize that there's a rhythm and there's a pattern to like, oh, we do this on the first of every month. Why don't I get ahead of it so it's done on the first of every month? So initiative is everything. The end.
I'll chime in and say, once again, as everybody else has said, leadership is everything. When I first started in my job, as I was the intern, and then I came on full-time as the editorial assistant for the group, it's usually months, maybe even years, until you can start acquiring and getting books on your list. I decided that I didn't want to wait that long. And I also wanted to show my boss, I'm not here just to be an intern or an assistant. I am here to, like, this is my job for the long run. So what I did was I decided my job is from 9 to 5. That's when I'm going to assist the people, which is what my job title is. I got in every day at 7:30 until 9 o'clock, and that was the time that I did the other part of the job, which was the acquiring that I wasn't necessarily supposed to be doing yet because it wasn't that point, but I, again, wanted to show that this was something that was important to me. And not only did my boss notice that, but the people in other departments, the sales and marketing teams, all saw me at my desk every single day at 7:30 and was like, well, this girl is determined. So I think, like Robyn said, right, like Allison said, showing your initiative, not waiting for someone to tell you you can do something, just start doing it to prove I'm not going to sit around. I'm not going to wait for you to tell me. I'm going to show you that I'm ambitious and I'm, like I said, here to stay. So.
I think one thing to also point out when it comes to leadership is the importance of collaboration. It's really, really important to have a positive attitude and to be able to work well with others. Of course, that may not always be easy, but I think you have to find a way to make it work because ultimately, like personally, I believe that the more brains on a project, the better. It'll just make the project even better with everyone working together. And I think someone mentioned this as well. Like I think it's really, really important to take criticism well. Like for example, my manager is always telling me that she's had issues with other writers in the past who are just really, really sensitive about their writing. And so when criticism is given to them, they don't take it well. They take it very personally. And you have to understand that, especially working for a company, you can't take things personally because ultimately it's not about you. It's not an attack towards you. It's more so like, how can we make this better for the company, right? So we have to take criticism really well, and you have to just take initiative. So if you see that you need something for that would help your team, even if it's not something that you would do personally, it's always a good idea to bring it up and say, hey, I think this would be like a good idea. And it could help us in this way, and it could help us in that way. And just have a positive attitude because ultimately that'll just like help push you further. And you never know like in what ways like your name is being mentioned. You know, I, for example, was brought into Ralph Lauren to do something specific, but then and I ended up doing something for the social media team just randomly. And next thing you know, it's like, hey, social really love you. Do you want to like work with them? And I was like, oh yeah, sure. So, and that just really had to deal with me just being like, okay, sure, like you need help with something. It's not a big deal for me to help you. So I think that the more open you are, the more opportunities and the more doors are open for you, for sure.
Great, thank you all so much. Our next question says, what advice would you give to a student looking for ways to get involved in your field?
Internship with a capital I, lowercase internship. Now is the moment. Everything is remote. Now, if you live in Western New York or upstate New York, you can still work in New York City. Like, if you don't have a summer internship lined up, I don't mean to shame you, but please get on it. Like, do whatever you can. Apply to these big names. Don't give up. Apply absolutely everywhere. Like, spend an entire day and click apply all to all of them and see what sticks, because this is your moment. You can do an internship anywhere. And like, yes, it would be incredible if it was paid. That's the dream. But like, not always. If you see something like, there are some big names in this panel right now. Like if you see a WW internship or like Mcgraw-Hill or Ralph Lauren or M&T, like talk to us. This is your networking opportunity. So like, you shoot us an email after and say like, I saw you on the panel. This internship looks really interesting. Do you think I'd be a good fit? And that is my advice.
I can do some advice. Portfolio. I know that throughout my career, I've been asked for a portfolio several times, and based on the nature of the jobs I've done, I haven't been able to give one per se. You know, of course, I have work that I could share, but it wasn't what they were looking for. So if you know, if you kind of know where you want to end up at, like for instance, like me, tech writer, having a portfolio of just basically just being an online resume of some examples of your work can do you a lot. I think it all depends, really. If you're not into tech writing and you're into something else, I think the same could apply. Just having like an online presence, like having a link on your resume showing you take initiative and you're interested in whatever it is that you're interested in, and just having that up online somewhere, I think that goes a long way.
Anyone else before we move to our last question? All right. So our last question, this student is a communication major with a concentration in PR and advertising, and a minor in professional writing, but they're interested in editing or working with social media as a career. This student is wondering if any of you on the panel have had another major besides professional writing or English.
I actually double majored in comm and professional writing. And I think for me, it was one of the best decisions that I made, because comm kind of was introduced. It was during a time when I was like one of the first people who had Twitter due to like my professors. And unfortunately, I didn't really use it. I didn't think it was like that important at the time because it was just the beginning, but obviously I was very, very wrong. Being a comm major really opened my eyes up to different things that was coming as far as like the tech world and the social media world and how that was evolving. And doubling as a professional writing major, sometimes I would actually intertwine. I think it helps to have more than one major if you have one, just to have like just to be able to bring different perspectives to the table when you're interviewing or interning. And I just want to say also, at least in my field, the idea of internship is changing. People are getting paid now. There was like this whole Vogue Condé Nast lawsuit back in the day. So people are getting paid now. So you guys would be a bit lucky in that sense. So definitely go for those. And like someone mentioned before, like if you guys need help when it comes to like what should be on a cover letter and like what should be in your resume, like what's important, what's not important. Like we've been there. I'm still going through it. Sometimes I don't even know. So definitely reach out to us. I'm definitely happy to steer you guys in whatever direction that I can.
Anyone else like to answer that question?
Your last chance. Any parting words before we conclude?
I wanted to just say, if anyone has any questions about, applying for graduate school or what it's like, I'm in it right now. And I did it in person and then it converted to virtual in the middle, which was crazy, but I can give you like insight into how that's going.
And we do have our breakout rooms too after, so you will be able to join if you have specific questions for the alums, bounce around to different breakout rooms for those specific questions. Our panelists, any parting words, last advice that you want to share before we go out into our breakout rooms?
Come talk to all of us.
Yes. Yeah, utilize us as resources for sure.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not giving my advice unless you come to my breakout room, and that's a clickbait. So you have to.
I was going to say that's very social media of you, Robyn.
Click here to find out what my secret answer to being the best employee ever is.
On behalf of the people who are not out there with fantastic jobs, I want to thank you all so very much for talking with us. You know who those people are. You're professors, but thank you so much.
Can I jump in, Carla? Thanks. Can you hear me okay? I'm just really impressed. I'm so proud of the people who have spoken tonight. I can't explain to you what it's like. You really don't know what I'm saying right now. To see you as a student, sometimes as a freshman, sophomore, junior, senior, and doing the internships and facing all the uncertainty that people have to face when they're in college. And am I good enough? And what do I really want to do? And those are great questions. And you all have found such eloquent answers to those questions, practical and eloquent. And I'm just really impressed. I think this kind of advice makes the things that you're saying make sense for anyone who's trying to do a writing thing, which is nobody understands it. They think we all want to go be Hemingway or something, drink in a bar. Well, maybe some of us do. But the idea is that you guys have shown and made yourself available in something that I think is just super generous. And I just want to say thank you. And I would love to talk to all of you one-on-one more about what your experience is like from this point forward. So I guess that's all I want to say. One last thing, I'm sorry, is that I heard you guys talking a lot about the difference between knowing, like being certified in a particular narrow area versus knowing what your skills are and having a large idea of how you could pivot is the word you used, or be flexible, or imagine different possibilities and do stuff like come in at 7:30. You're like, find different ways to put yourself in graduate school while you're doing, like, in other words, nobody's going to tell you the strategies for trying to become what you want to be. You have to be creative. And I think that's really kind of the central word that I keep hearing people use over and over, not necessarily using flashy metaphors, but being able to imagine things. And that's just really impressive. So I want to say that. Thank you.
Dr. Frank, I was just talking about you on Sunday because I had breakfast with a friend of mine who also went to Cortland and was an English major, because there are very few professors who leave an impact on you in some kind of way. And you were one of those people for me, because you were always challenging us. And it was always a challenge that I felt like I couldn't do. Like, I specifically remember you giving an assignment where we had to write a one-page story and you had to be one sentence. And I was like, how am I going to do this? This is insane. What is he talking about? And it was completely foreign to all of us, I'm sure, but we were able to do it. I did it. And that's one of those things that I remember. I was pushed to a level that I thought I couldn't push to, and I did it. And I still have that. It's one of those writing pieces that I really treasure. And I graduated 11 years ago almost, and I still remember that. So thank you. And I apologize for being late sometimes, because I was definitely late sometimes.
I was going to talk to you about that.
Okay, so to conclude our speaker series tonight, I want to thank everyone here, our alumni, our students, our faculty, staff. We really appreciate you all taking the time to come here tonight, be a part of this. I know I learned so much tonight. The questions were awesome. The answers were great as well. So thank you guys for all those awesome questions. And I hope you guys can join the breakout rooms to network and learn a little bit more. But if you can't, I hope you all have a great night. And again, thank you for coming.
And thank you all for putting this